Good evening. This is The Pipeline. Believe it or not, your eyes are working just fine. I'm not Derek. I'm not Dave. I'm not Nigel. And I'm definitely not Corey. I am your host tonight, James Finkbeiner. And I am joined by our copy editor, our homes reporter, our veteran boss guy around here, Myke Thomas. And we're also joined tonight by our business reporter, Vancouver traffic reporter, Shaun Polczer. How are you guys doing this evening?
We're doing good. Doing good.
Awesome. Everybody's had a good day today so far.
Lots of stuff going on. Yep.
Oh, it's been a busy day. Bunch of bad news, but a bunch of good news too.
Indeed.
All right. Well, before we get started, we're just going to say a big thank you to one of our favorite sponsors, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. If you're a firearms owner or you're friends with a firearms owner, you should check out the CSSA. They are protecting your gun rights, your property rights, and they are taking the Trudeau government to task on their attempted gun bans and gun grabs. For more information on them, check them out, cssacila.org. All right. Well, obviously, the biggest news story of the week so far has been the federal court ruling that the Trudeau Liberals broke the Constitution when they invoked the Emergencies Act. Yes. So, Mike, why don't you break down this story for us a little bit more?
It didn't surprise me at all, that ruling, because it's the truth. I remember 2 years ago when the trucks were rolling into Ottawa, and I wrote a column about it and said, this is great, but how are they going to be accepted in Ottawa? We all know that story, but it's really, really refreshing to see the federal court go, no, that was wrong, and you got to fix it. Not surprisingly, Trudeau's government is now going to appeal it, so who knows where it goes from there. Hopefully the appeal gets shut down.
Yeah, so Shaun, tell me about this appeal. How would they appeal it? Because looking at the ruling and what was written, I'm not seeing very much wiggle room here. The judge even came out and admitted that he was biased against the protesters before the ruling and wrote that into his ruling, and that's rare on its own.
Well, my understanding is that because it is in a federal court that it can be appealed. So the federal court and the federal court of appeal are kind of one and the same thing, but it seems that they would be able to appeal that specific ruling. And I'm not sure what would happen after that, but it would go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I don't know who would challenge the ruling. Maybe it would be the same parties that brought it forth. Yeah. The Constitutional Foundation, and then it's going to the Supreme Court. And I'm pretty sure this is exactly where this is going to wind up.
Yeah. So it's Christine Van Guyen, I believe. Sorry, I probably butchered that, from the Canadian Constitution Foundation. And of course, they were joined with our friends at the CCFR, John Carpe, and the Canadian Center. Oh, wait, that was the Canadian Center for Firearms Rights. So sorry, CSSA. So the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
There you go.
We have so many acronym clubs going on. So those groups, they grouped together, and then they fought this at the federal courts, and now we've got this ruling. I don't see that they're going to give up the fight on this at all, and you know, the ruling that came out was pretty damning, specifically around the unlawful search and seizure, the seizure of the bank accounts. What kind of fallout could we see from that seizures now?
Well, we were talking around this morning that it's highly ironic that it is a Trudeau government that is trampling on two signature pieces of his father's legacy, which happen to be the War Measures Act, just watch me, and also the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is what the Emergencies Act was meant to replace, because the War Measures Act, you know, as we know, it dates back to World War I, and it's only been invoked a handful of times, including the FLQ crisis in Quebec. So there's a bit of an irony there. The other irony was that he made Deputy Prime Minister Christopher Freeland basically stand up and answer for it, because he didn't really have the courage to do it on his own.
Well, I mean, what happened when the protesters showed up? He had COVID and went into hiding, and so did half of the ministers. They refused to talk to him. Yeah, they refused to meet with any of the protesters. They even refused to meet with the protester surrogates and lawyers. They just, no, we're not talking to them. I believe he called them a small fringe minority with unacceptable views.
And tin hats. That's
But you know, bullies are cowards, so
Yeah.
it's hardly a surprise that he would do that.
Oh, exactly. It's, it's just another thing in a long line of his missteps, and if anything, it shows his arrogance.
Yeah.
This is the third case, I believe now, or third law that's been a pinnacle of his leadership that's now been ruled unconstitutional by courts in the country, and he has vowed to appeal all of them. I think even Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said that the UCP, if they appeal this, would intervene as well.
as an intervener.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
she also cited the plastics ban, the environmental review ban. Now we've got emissions caps, clean electricity regulations. There's a whole list. About the only one that they've actually managed to put through was the price on the carbon tax.
yeah. And so that was one of the only ones that ended up in the Supreme Court as well. And the Supreme Court ruled that perhaps there is enough of an existential crisis that the only way to combat climate change is nationally.
Right.
They don't actually debate the science around climate change, just whether or not the federal government has the power to impose that. I guess it's what do they call it? A levy. It's a carbon levy.
Yeah.
But it's as you noted, though, it's on a national, so it's like on a national scale. Doesn't necessarily give them the authority to start going after singular provinces and singular sectors of the economy. The notion of that ruling was that it was going to be applied equally through all sectors.
One of the other things that's like interesting with this is if you're the prime minister and you're sitting around looking at your cabinet table, and now this is the third law that's been, a big part of your leadership and your time as prime minister, do you start looking at your attorney generals and say, why does every law we try to pass get struck down? And do you start to regroup and maybe consider the Constitution before you start making laws going forward? Or
I don't think the prime minister is of that mind. No. He's got an agenda, and like I said, he's pushing it through. He's a bully, and damn the bridges. I don't think he cares.
Well, it would take a little bit of reasoning, some kind of sober second thinking, because if you think about it, pretty much everything that they've done in this last term has been unconstitutional.
I mean, since the Liberals have been in power, I think the most secure and best career you could have ever been in was a lawyer. Because since day one, there have been nothing but lawsuits. And that's between the provinces and the feds, between the citizens and the provinces. Everybody is just going to court over everything, which this ruling now is going to open the floodgates, I think, on class action lawsuits. The folks who had their bank accounts frozen are going to have a very good case that the government acted illegally in freezing their assets. And
I agree. And I think that when all of that was taking place 2 years ago, initially people were afraid of a number of different things. I'm not talking just about the people in Ottawa who were afraid of the convoy and bouncy castles because they're scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, SpongeBob.
But I think people reacted in fear, like okay, what is really going on? What is going on? And that fear factor, I think this lifted it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It took any kind of fear that they were having back then out of it. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts there will be a class action suit with the 500 plus bank account people, or people who had their bank accounts frozen.
Yeah.
Because they got a really good case right now.
Oh,
Well,
definitely.
I remember when this was all happening that, my thoughts were like, is there some kind of an insurrection going on in here? Like they're raising funds and funding money, and they're talking about tents full of guns, off Parliament Hill and all this kind of stuff. And then foreign interference and foreign actors. And you kind of thought like, well, geez, is this really a revolution?
But all that came from the other side of the Freedom Convoy. And, it's propaganda, and then they're trying to increase the fear factor and what bad people they are and stuff like that. So they'll bring in fake stuff like that, like the Nazi flag.
Yeah.
Totally fake. But Canadians, people are busy. They're doing what they do, and they look at that on TV, on the evening news, and they're going, "Oh wow, this is bad. This is really bad. If that's happening, and that's happening," and then you start talking to each other, and that just makes it worse.
Yeah.
So this ruling, I think people go, "Wow, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's okay to go after them now and take and get even, if you, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, there was even polls coming out. I believe I think the last one I was looking at was from November 2022, and over 70% of the Canadians polled in that poll were against the convoy.
Yep.
But if you go back to the mainstream's media coverage, the way the politicians had phrased everything, even Jagmeet Singh has now come out saying, well, I didn't support the use of the Emergencies Act, but everybody's sharing the letter that you wrote, Jagmeet.
Yeah.
We can read it. We have memories. The internet doesn't forget. But it's fascinating that the judge, and if that judge was just going off of what he's seen in the media, what he was hearing from his politicians, no wonder why he went in thinking that all of the protesters were guilty of sin. Yeah. But now you have someone who has gone through and looked at every single aspect of this case, and he's saying, no, this was inappropriate. There was no threat to Canada's national security. We can argue if there was a threat to Canada's economic security, specifically around the border blockades. But, in Coutts, there's 3 other border crossings, all within a couple of hours of Coutts.
Yep.
All of the traffic was routed around it. Were they 24-hour crossings? No. Did it slow things down? Absolutely. Should they have shut the border down and closed the road? Absolutely not. But I don't see, if one border crossing is so important to the economic interests of Canada, we may have bigger problems here, that we need to diversify our borders and beef up our security and our economic stability.
But I don't think that was the problem. I mean, we got a lot of border crossings, as you point out. Coutts is maybe the highest profile because of where it is. And so if you're going to have a blockade, that's where you have it. Should you have had the blockade? No, I don't agree with that at all. And it's also got to remember the blockade was not part of the Freedom Convoy. And
No.
nor was the blocking the Ambassador Bridge.
No.
That wasn't the people in Ottawa. Should they have done it? Again, no, they shouldn't have. But it's a matter of where you're going to get the most publicity, where you're going to get the most media exposure. And Coutts is the answer. Certainly not Roosevelt in BC.
Sure. And it's funny because a week before the Coutts border blockade, and this is when the trucker convoy was already going on, a caller called in to, I believe it was QR77, Shay Ganem, the talk show there, and said there is going to be a blockade at Coutts next week, and this is going to be big, and it's going to be even bigger than what's going on in Ottawa. Yeah. And really, the problem in Ottawa was just the lack of preparation for the police. They, they knew these guys were coming. They had 10 days to prepare for it, and they didn't. So when you've got a bunch of rowdy hooligans and hot tubs and peeing, drinking beer in the streets, peeing on the war memorial.
That's the thing. I mean, so I was in Coutts. The story with that is it was actually the Western Standard. We got sent a message from a source in the trucking community that I know. I passed the information on to Melanie Risden. We started working the story, and we found out there was 3 groups at Coutts. There was farmers, there was the truckers, and then there was some more freedom-orientated folks that were there. I don't know. I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories on who those people were and what they believed and what they stood for. There may be some evidence that part of those protesters did have a plan to engage with the police. That's going to come out in court as well. But the overwhelming majority of the people that were there were tired of the COVID restrictions. They had gone too far, and they had gone on for too long, and they were concerned about themselves, their own health, and for the health of their kids. They did not want to overthrow the government. Their group in Coutts wanted to have coffee with Jason Kenney, and that is hardly a scary situation. Right. And the demands out of Ottawa were meet with us. Have you guys ever heard of any government that was overthrown by a meeting?
No.
No.
And also, it seems to me with the Coutts, because the border was open for cross-border trucking traffic, even though it was closed to tourist traffic and pedestrian traffic. And it was when they imposed the vaccine restrictions on the drivers when they were crossing back, and that was causing delays. That the protest originally came out from.
And that just shines a light on how stupid and thoughtless the restrictions were. Well, a guy in a big truck all by himself. Got to get vaccinated.
That for for the last 2 years at that point had been able to work safely without becoming massive carriers, without causing massive outbreaks. There was no issues. But also, let's not forget that Trudeau and the transportation minister at the time, Omar, so I'm spacing on his name, but they were about to pass interprovincial vaccine mandates for truck drivers as well, which means, you know, some of these guys had already lost the ability to enter the United States because of the United States' vaccine mandate, which they dropped soon after. But then what were they going to do? Were they going to post up the sheriffs or the RCMP at the Alberta Saskatchewan border and ask for vaccine passports?
Blockade, let me see it.
Well, they were doing that. They were, if you drove in through BC and you crossed the
BC, they
border,
were. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
people were getting their cars key scratched. We got chased around downtown Vernon basically because we had Alberta plates.
Yeah, so it was a wild time. It was crazy. But you know, the even still, Chrystia Freeland yesterday repeated several times that there was this existential threat to the health and safety of Canadians. But everything that we've seen come out of it, and even the Rollo that report, you know, that one said that what they did was constitutional, but none of these reports have ever actually indicated that there was a threat to Canadians' health or safety at all.
You know, and I was in Arizona when everything got clamped down here, like in early 21 when everything got bad. And in Arizona, it was totally different down there.
Yeah.
They treated adults like they were adults, which they didn't do here.
Yeah.
It's like we've got to cuddle our little children who are 45 years old and keep them safe. Down there, no masks. There's a big signs on all the stores. If you want to wear a mask, that's fine, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
And it was handled so much differently.
Yeah.
And the sense down there was, okay, something's going on. I guess we should look after ourselves. Whereas up here, we were corralled and herded around like cattle.
Yeah, if you look, Canada and Australia had some of the strangest and strictest lockdowns and COVID rules in place in the entire world. Canada and Australia were some of the hardest hit countries too.
Well, China had some pretty bad restrictions. And when I think the turning point for me was when they had locked all those people up into that apartment building and there was a fire and all the people died.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the government was using the restrictions basically as means to keep people from protesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the ruling from the Fed court now is going to go back and look at all that stuff in its various forms of restrictions and stuff like that and shine a brighter light on it. In terms of maybe there is something that can be done for the people who made those bad decisions. I'm not suggesting they be punished, but at least learn a lesson from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and is there a lesson? Like, are the feds going to learn a lesson here? Like I said, we've got 3 different cases now, ruled unconstitutional. They've been told to stay in their lane. They've continued. Like Stephen Guilbeault has not taken the foot off the gas pedal on plastics at all, even though the courts have just said no. And I mean, not going to get too far into our next topic here, but does this at least restore some faith? Because I think Canadians have lost a bit of faith in our judiciary and our judicial system. Do you think this kind of ruling restores some faith and says that, no, there's actually quite a lot of very good people inside the judiciary in this country?
I don't know. I don't know if that's what I'm hoping is that people who have been on the sidelines, either who bought into the whole thing or just sat back and went, this doesn't look right, but kept quiet, that people will now be motivated to come forward and make some noise with the politicians, because there's only one thing that scares a politician, and that's not getting reelected.
Mm-hmm.
And if the people stand up and wave flags and go, you're out of here unless you do this, and the other thing, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But the people need to stand up and go, enough is enough. And if they want to revisit what happened, they should do that and talk they should sit down with people they know and say, we have to get together and do something about this, because we can do something about this at the polling booths. And just by making a lot of noise. Instead of the politicians scaring the populace need to rise up with the pitchforks and the torches, and scare the politicians.
Well, my impression of this whole thing is it doesn't really restore any of my faith in the justice system.
No.
But I think what it does is it reinforces some of that anger that's out there in some of those old divisions. And it's like, see, we told you so, like all the way along, and we were right and you're wrong. And they're going to go ahead and appeal it.
Oh, for sure. I was lucky enough to host the Corey Morgan show earlier today, and the comments, there was people in there and they said, no, we're going to sue.
Yep.
We are going to come back after you. And you know what? I hope you all win. I do. I'm a little upset that it's tax dollars. I wish our politicians would start respecting the money that we're paying them instead of pumping them all into these legal cases. If you do what you're elected to do and you do what you said you were going to do, you're not going to have everybody taking every single policy to court. So one of the other things that's happened out of this now is a Liberal MP from Newfoundland, I believe it's Ken McDonald, has now called for a leadership review of Justin Trudeau.
Yes.
And we seen when people started calling for a leadership review of Jason Kenney, that ball started rolling and that ball didn't stop rolling. Do we think this is going to pick up momentum here in the next few months?
I think yes. The short answer. I think that, again, when there's a leader of things that people have been afraid to undertake by themselves, but understand now that there's possibly a group of people who will join in and do that kind of thing. More people will join in and do that. So I think it'll have an effect, and I think it could snowball. But again, people have to get involved.
I'm not so sure. I think that it's because the Liberal power base is so concentrated, out in Atlantic Canada. It's a little bit of an outlier, and we've seen some of these things with the fuel oil, and those guys are genuinely scared that they're not going to get reelected. But I mean, you start coming out west here, we've got like 2 in Alberta, 2, and they're gone. Like, I mean,
the Conservatives were out door knocking in Calgary Skyview here last weekend. So
really?
They're taking aim at George Chahal. And I think he's going to have a big fight in the next election. But speaking of former Liberals and former Liberal ministers and Alberta Liberal ministers, Amarjeet Sohi, Jody Gondek, Calgary and Edmonton's war on lunch. But not just Calgary and Edmonton, Banff. Banff is in on this too. So Shaun, you wrote the article on this. Please explain this to me.
Oh my God. How do we begin here?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's frame it against the backdrop of the single-use plastics ban, which has been overturned by the Constitution, right? So now what we're doing is we're putting charges on compostable and reusable paper bags.
Yeah.
We're increasing the charges on the reusable cloth bags. We're trying to eliminate ketchup packets and disposable cups from our landfills. So, you got to think this has been done in Vancouver already for more than a year and a half. So whatever happened in Vancouver is going to be coming here. Edmonton last week just cranked up the price on its reusable bags. And so these are the ones for the shopping. I think most people have kind of already got their head around grocery shopping that you bring your reusable bag.
Yep.
But now those are $2 in Edmonton, right? And then now they're also doing them in the restaurants, right? So when you go through your fast food and your takeout, I think it was publisher Derek was complaining that they put his food on a tray and they put it on the hood of his car and told him to come out and get it. Or pay 15 cents. And of course, that he's not going to pay 15
But that even paying 15 cents, they're saying don't use these bags unless you pay for them. But we want to keep these bags out of the landfills unless you pay for them, then it's okay.
Yeah.
None of this makes any sense.
No. We already pay for our compost. The paper bags are compostable. Yeah. Even a paper bag that goes into the environment, believe it or not, it's also compostable. So I understand wanting to reduce waste. I do. Humans are just inherently wasteful. But, inflation, the cost of living, and just living life is inconvenient enough. Yeah. And now you're going to get, we're supposed to carry lunch kits around with us everywhere. When you go out for the night, sometimes you don't expect to take anything home. I usually eat a portion of my meal and
take
then
it
I'll
home.
save the rest. But now you're telling me that I can't have a bag to take that
You
home.
have to bring your little lunch bucket.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a great idea. I used to have my Bobby Orr lunch kit when I was in school. You
Well,
know, and my thermos, and the kids
Isn't
would
that
laugh.
cute? That's nice.
a friend of a friend was explaining to me today that their friend is in Edmonton, and those plastic lunch trays, like the cafeteria type tray. They have that, a lunch kit, and a reusable set of forks and knives, a metal straw, and all of this just in their vehicle now, just in case they want McDonald's. I don't know what your guys' vehicles are like. My vehicle's a mess. I would not eat off of anything in my car. So, I just, what are the sanitary concerns? I noticed in the Banff bylaw that they don't have to accept a dirty bag if it's unsanitary. But I know of some people here in Calgary that have been handing the folks at Wendy's, McDonald's bags, and Burger King's gotten a few Dairy Queen bags. Is it sanitary to hand fast food employees back a used fast food bag?
They're encouraging. Look, the city will have bag police. They will go around and they will check it. And it's it's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
I am not telling which restaurant yesterday did not charge me for a bag when I got my soup and sandwich.
Okay, write it down because we're going there.
I was a little shocked. They asked after I'd already paid if I wanted a bag, and I thought, well, this is going to be awkward, but it's going to be even more awkward carrying my soup and sandwich through the plus 15 going like this. Yeah. But it's, inflation's already through the roof. The cost of food is through the roof. People are going grocery shopping, and honestly, we don't mean to not take a bag. I just forget mine. Okay, but
we're spending way too much time on what a bunch of people did. We should spend time on those people. In Calgary, the City Hall, in Edmonton, folks in City Hall, this was their idea. And where did they get the idea? What do they think they're accomplishing? They don't justify it. They just go, yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah.
We'll keep the bags won't be going to the landfill. Well, they will. All you have to do is you're paying 15 cents for a bag that's going to go to the landfill.
Yeah.
So we can complain about the counter experience, but what needs to be done, again, is that people need to look at the people who sit in the City Hall and make these idiot decisions. And to cost them physically, but verbally or in writing letters and saying, you're out of here. And petitions and stuff like that scare the hell out of politicians. If they think they're not going to get back in, they'll change.
I think we need to look at proactive solutions that work. I think people generally will go along with things if they think that it's going to have an effect and if it is going to make a meaningful difference. My first job when I was growing up was at McDonald's, and back in the day, like you're talking about the packaging, it was that styrofoam.
Oh yeah.
You got your Big Macs in the styrofoam, and
that's right. Yeah.
And of course, the issue that back then was the ozone layer. So they went whole hog into the paper and things, but
styrofoam's banned.
If you've ever had to work in the back of a McDonald's restaurant and you see how much of that crap winds up in the bin, and
I don't want to know,
and how it smells,
I don't want to know.
Then you can kind of go, okay, well, you know what? Maybe there is a solution, and if we could come up with a solution that would work.
But we've already come up with a solution. A Calgary company has come up with a solution.
Yeah.
The Calgary Co-op didn't even fight for them, and they helped develop these bags with the City of Calgary, with the City of Calgary Waste Department, and we're not even using these bags. So we have to buy these compostable bags, the paper bags, or a cloth bag. But we have a perfectly good plastic adjacent type bag that is not plastic. It is compostable. I reuse that bag every single time. I bring that bag home from Co-op. It gets used in my house. It goes into my compost bin. It gets filled up with compost, and it goes and it gets composted. That was a common sense. That was a brilliant way to reduce and eliminate waste, because we reduced it by getting rid of the plastic bags. We eliminated plastic, and then I reused it a few times, and then it composted and returned back into dirt. But that's a bad idea.
Well, it's so funny because I went to the Calgary wine store here last week, and it was the day after the bylaw came into effect. And I asked for a paper bag for the wine, and normally it doesn't cost anything, right? And the guy said, well, it's going to cost $1, right? I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, I'm serious. So then at the till, they were selling those rolled up compostable bags, like a dozen of them, for 75 cents.
Yeah.
So I went, oh, okay. Here, give me the compostable bag.
Well, and honestly, Co-op is still selling those bags. I may pop in and just go buy some and use those, because
we use them at home for our organics.
Yeah, they're going to be a lot more convenient to throw in a box in your vehicle. And when you need the bag, it's going to be like Kleenex. You're going to be reaching into the back of your vehicle, pulling out all of these bags. But it's just, I'm fine with reducing waste, but I like good ideas. And I don't think charging a fee and making things more inconvenient for people is going to work. I have a closet full of cloth recyclable bags or reusable bags because I forget them.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll do it. You'll pay the $1, but nothing's going to change. I still have all of that trash that did not get reused. And as far as I know, those cloth reusable bags are not recyclable and they're not compostable.
I don't know, but I have the same thing, but I figured out the other day, because I'm a little slow at some of these things. Once I get home, get stuff out of the bag, I take the bag and put it back in the car. Yeah. So it's there. So I don't know if I'm going to go someplace and need it or not. But if I do, there it is. Instead of going, oh, now I got to buy another one.
I got a pile under my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody needs one, just to get under the
that's gone after this.
No, but I think you make another good point, though, is that when you inconvenience people, sometimes you have the opposite effect. Right? Yeah. Like instead of accepting a reasonable solution where people can, if you just inconvenience them and just piss them off, then people are just aren't going to go along with it.
Well, and even on apps, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, stuff like that, now they're just tacking on a bag fee, but it's just a 15-cent bag fee. So the amount of bags doesn't seem to matter, because Uber Eats doesn't know how many bags you're going to need to package that order. The restaurant doesn't know how many bags you're going to need to package that order. Yeah. So, I feel like some businesses are just going to completely ignore it and say, okay, city, go ahead, come get us. And some businesses are just going to do, okay, we'll put 15 cents on. We can't guesstimate, how many bags we're going to need. Yeah. So we're just going to throw 15 cents on there. And other businesses, like you said, Co-op's charging $1 for a paper bag already. Well, it says 15 cents. So please tell me why your paper bag is so expensive. It's, I don't know.
And it's just a single-use wine bag,
Which reminds me, everybody, please vote in the next election. I'll talk about this column for the second time today. December 12th, Preston Manning, 20% of Calgarians support this mayor or voted for this mayor. So 80% were the majority. Let's make some changes in 2025. All right, so moving on. Tucker Carlson is in town. Tucker Carlson is in town, and holy, what I don't get it. So there's protests going on, I believe, in Calgary. There was a whatchamacallit? There was not a GoFundMe, change.org petition to have him banned from entering Canada. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why is everybody so up in arms about Tucker?
They're afraid of him. He speaks from the other side of the political line, and he's not afraid to say what he wants to say. I mean, and you got to understand, a great part of Tucker Carlson is the performance and the amount of money he gets for performing.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think the people who start petitions, they're just out afraid of him. Mm-hmm. That he could influence an election, and all the people in the right wing get elected. And the other people don't. So I think it's fear. I think it's just pure fear.
Well, you guys didn't go, but I did.
Yeah, you did.
You handed me off your ticket, so I did come down there. Protests, the security out there was nuts. It was crazy. Like there was definitely way more security personnel and cops than there were protesters. It took me almost an hour to get in. I wouldn't consider myself a Tucker fan. I'm familiar with him. And he's got the persona and the celebrity and everything, but he gave a barn burner of a speech. Like he doesn't use any notes. There's no teleprompter. He just goes straight from the lip. And that's pretty much exactly what he said. He said, the reason these people are afraid of you is because you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got our young Jonathan Bradley in the Edmonton one tonight. So get onto the Western Standard and read about all this stuff. We got Jennifer, who covered Calgary, and Jonathan covering Edmonton tonight.
But yeah, no, not only is a fabulous speaker, he's also got quite an extensive Canadian background. His family is originally from Nova Scotia before they emigrated to the States in some kind of generation. So he's, he's 2 or 3 generations removed, and he's very familiar with the political scene up here. He knows lots of Canadians, and he basically just said, Canadians are too polite. You guys don't want to talk about this, and and that's the difference between the politics up here and down in the States, is because when people are making these changes up here and these liberal governments, and they're telling you you're wrong, we don't want to have to stand up and basically shut them down. And so he says, when somebody gives you a slogan, diversity is strength, he goes, like, ask them why, how. What does like, we go to the hockey game, we see diversity of spray, and we just all kind of, okay, whatever, that we all try to be too accommodating, basically, of other people's views.
Well, and that's right. Again, and I keep riding the same horse around this room, but people got to get involved. They got to question things and go, okay, why? Why is that? Prove it to me. Yeah.
So he said, like, you want to increase immigration to increase the economy of the country? Tell me how it's doing that. He goes, when your house prices are so high, when your healthcare system is overtaxed. He said that he doesn't know one single Canadian now that brags about the healthcare system. No. And he says, because there's just too many people. There's not enough to go around, right?
I know. Like, even
and he said, that's not racist. That's math.
Oh, for sure. Like, I am a massive supporter of immigration when it's done intelligently. But we cannot open the doors and bring everyone in when we don't have a house for them, we don't have a doctor for them, we don't have a school for them.
They can't pay for themselves.
It's like inviting someone over to your house. They show up at your house. It is jam-packed full. There's no place to sit. There's nothing to eat. They can't go to the washroom. And you just tell them to stand out on the front step and freeze, but enjoy the party.
Or they never leave.
Thanks
so,
for
he made this joke about, because his family is Episcopalian at Christmas time. And he says, and then everybody shuts up until they have a couple drinks. And then all of a sudden it's a free-for-all.
Well, and even like in the United States, there's some contrast here as well, because they're having a massive illegal immigration crisis. Ours is legal. Ours is encouraged. Theirs is illegal. I seen that Governor Greg Abbott in Texas today put out a letter saying, Biden, if you're not going to take care of this border situation, we are. And this is no longer you're on notice on a letter. This is, I have activated the Texas National Guard to defend the interests of Texas. Now, that's not going to happen in Alberta. We don't have an Alberta National Guard. But
I watched the primary in New Hampshire last night, and they polled the people, and their number one concern wasn't the economy, it's the border.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that border crisis down there is number one in New Hampshire, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So again, you get involved, you see what's going on, you ask the questions, and it changes things.
So Brett Wilson asked him this question, Tucker, what do you think of a border wall between Canada and the United States? And then he says, yeah, I think it's a great idea. He goes, but not for the reason that you think. Like, it's to shield you guys from, from us.
I would agree with him there, because almost all of Canadian gun crime is because of illegal guns smuggled in from the United States. Yep. Now, Canada's drug problem used to be majorly contributed by the United States. That's not true anymore. We've turned those tables around. We now import the drugs from China, and we're the problem. And the drugs are leaving, especially from the West Coast, into the United States. And like, they have, like, liberals and the people on the left have essentially made it that if you're against immigration or secure borders in any way, that you're racist. And that is just simply not true. If I'm going to invite somebody to my house, I want them to be safe, warm, fed, have health care, be able to get a job, be able to find a place to live.
We're going to come live with you.
And be polite. Well, be good house guests, right?
Yeah. But we've done nothing. And in fact, we started with BC asking to maybe have an itty-bitty decriminalization of an itty-bitty amount of drugs. But BC asked for that. How did it end up across the whole country before anybody even noticed? Nothing else was changed. So now you have all these drug labs being set up in Canada to sell to the States. And, being a good neighbor is having a good fence.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah.
you know, the United States and Canada need to work on their own border, but the border at Mexico and the United States also affects Canada.
Well,
And these things need to be addressed.
he made a comment about that as well, and it was not so much about a border thing, but it was about how the government is giving your kids fentanyl, right?
Yeah.
And he said they are basically literally killing your kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and we've seen that this is happening in BC, and it's happening
he
without
mentioned specifically
parental
BC.
permission.
Right.
And that is psychotic. Like, look at the way we put warnings on cigarettes and cannabis compared to how those info pamphlets that came out of Medicine Hat on crack and meth.
Yeah.
How? I'm terrified to look at my cigarette packages. The ones that started coming out this year, the new ads, they're effective. They're graphic. Some of them are a little stomach churning, but we are handing out free crack pipes and teaching kids how to safely smoke meth. So, you know, Tucker has a lot
Assuming
of.
that it's safe.
But the other thing
Yeah.
when handing out the free drugs is you're creating a revenue stream for those people because they get the free things, they go out and sell them on the street.
Yeah.
So the people who get the free drugs are making money off it.
Yep. Well, but then Tucker stands up and says something against these things, and they instantly push him and say, "Nope, that's just alt-right. That is your conspiracy theorist. It's everything." So I've got issues with Tucker. I'm not Tucker Carlson's biggest fan. If any reporter cost the Western Standard $1 billion, I'm probably not going to like them either. But
I promise.
free speech is so fundamental to a functioning democracy, and it mind boggles me and blows my mind that these people want to shut him down from speaking in Canada. I have been saying this since the day we announced the event. If you don't want to hear Tucker Carlson speak, don't go. You can shut off your phone. You don't have to follow him on Twitter. You can even block him. You can hit the mute button. He's got a new show on Rumble. We're also on Rumble. I hope all you guys are watching on Rumble. If you're on our YouTube channel, make sure you switch over to Rumble, join the conversation there. But, you know, Rumble has been this growing platform because unlike YouTube, they're not censoring every single thing. They have very broad rules. If it's not illegal and it's not, I believe, pornography, it's generally allowed on Rumble. And that is, it's kind of ironic that Tucker Carlson is now doing his shows based on free speech.
Yep.
And Canada, which should be one of the best protected free speech countries on the planet, there's a group of people that just want to shut that speech down.
Yeah. Out of fear.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. So last thing, we had this note on here. Actually, no, I want to go back to Tucker a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So as you said, Jen is out covering Tucker in Calgary, but tonight, the big event, Rogers Place. I think it's 15,000 or just under 15,000 people.
Yeah. It would be something like that. Yeah.
It's Hawk Ring.
Yeah, and he's got Conrad Black and Rex Murphy with him, and I am jealous. I am a massive fan of Rex Murphy. What kind of message do you think Rex Murphy is going to send to Canada, specifically the West, tonight?
So I think speak your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to say what you think. Don't let the left wing radicals, I guess they are, intimidate you. Stand up and go about your business and get other people involved. I think that would be his message. I can't obviously speak for him, but and because I'm with you on that. I really like that guy.
Yeah. I every time I read one of his columns, I read it in his voice exactly the way he would say it. I actually do it with Nigel as well. It's from when Nigel when he's on the show or when he used to read some of his columns for video work, just the way he reads it, the way he speaks. Now when I read one of his columns, I hear his voice in my head the whole way through.
Yeah.
So finally, last thing we've got on the list here, sneaky fourth topic, the Alberta Pension Plan.
Ooh, yeah.
So is that done? Did the United Conservative Party just give up? Are they going to throw their hat in? What do we think?
I was talking to a lady when that was first announced, and she's collecting CPP, and was like totally against the Alberta Pension Plan because she she didn't understand it. She thought she was going to lose her pension. She wasn't going to get any money. And I think that's a general thought, especially among the older people like me, who why wait, who don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Alberta government could do a lot better job explaining it. And I think they may have just gone under the cloud cover for a bit to get organized, to get the word out there properly of how actually it works. Because they just went, we'll get $3 billion from CPP and we'll do this, we'll do that. And nobody believed it.
No.
It sounded like, no, that can't be happening.
Well, I do know because I sat in on a session here out at Pritis a couple months back before Christmas, and Travis Taves was talking, and they had been working on the pension plan reform even before, when Jason Kenney was still premier and he was still finance minister. And he was basically saying, so they're waiting for this actuator's report on how much they are actually going to get back. He said, because when they saw that $344 billion number, he goes, their eyes popped.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And he goes, if it's even half that much, then this is an easy sell, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that we don't know how much it is or how their Ottawa's going to respond.
And we need to know that. We need to find out.
Well, they need us more than we need them.
And I don't think anything's going to move on this until we actually get I think it's the parliamentary budget officer that's putting out the report on how much Alberta's portion actually is.
Yeah.
Parliamentary budget officer is fairly empathetic to these kinds of causes that we are in favor
I
of.
like him because he is no nonsense, and all he ever says is exactly how much something's going to cost. There's no politics, there's no feelings, there's no nothing, there's numbers.
That's the way it should be.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for joining us. If you are not already a member of the Western Standard, check out www.westernstandard.news/subscribe. You can get a membership there for $100 a year or $10 a month, and we should appreciate your support. It's support from our members and folks watching like you that let us do these things, that let us give away free tickets to Tucker Carlson, that let us put the shows on. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year.